Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description to support now.
When the energy is high and the music is right, pushing past your limits becomes that much easier. Take a reggaeton run or strength class on the Peloton tread, and you'll quickly see why these are the workouts you've been searching for. Every day brings new challenges from expert coaches who train and speak the same language as you do. Level up your workouts with Peloton Tread. Find your push, find your power. Peloton. Visit onepeloton.com.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Every idea starts with a problem. Warby Parker's was simple. Glasses are too expensive. So they set out to change that. By designing glasses in-house and selling directly to customers, they're able to offer prescription eyewear that's expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Warby Parker glasses are made from premium materials like impact-resistant polycarbonate and custom acetate. And they start at just $95, including prescription lenses. Get glasses made from the good stuff. Stop by a Warby Parker store near you.
This is Writers on Film, the only podcast dedicated to books on cinema. Hello everybody and welcome to Writers on Film. That sound you can hear in the background is the sound of a motorboat chugging past a canal. So as you can tell, we're in the Venice Film Festival still, and this is the second of our reports on the Venice Film Festival. This is being recorded on Saturday. I've forgotten what day it is.
I know, time has no meaning at this point. It's day 4.
Day 4, festival time. It's a Saturday. I think it's the 31st of August, I think. But,
you are correct, sir. Yes.
Excellent, excellent. And I'm here with David Mouriquand of EuroNews. Hi, David.
Hi, John.
How are you surviving this heat? This has got to be the hottest Venice Film Festival I've ever been to.
Yeah, I think I've been coming for 10 years plus, and yeah, I can't remember the last time I had to get a change of t-shirt with me when coming on the Lido, because it is perversely warm.
I walked past one of those sort of temperature gauges, what are they called, thermometers, outside a pharmacy at 8 o'clock this morning, and it was reading 32 degrees.
Yeah, it's no, it is punishing, and also the contrast when you step out of the ice box that are the cinema theatres, and then you get this kind of wave of heat afterwards. It's it kind of knocks you out a little bit.
It's like going from a fridge to a toaster straight away.
A kiln.
And today there was an interesting... I went to Sala Corinto, which is a sort of temporary box cinema that's set up right over by where we're sitting. And the guy who sort of controls the temperature made an announcement at the beginning of the screening and said, we know it's cold and we know, but we've got a lot of people coming into the next screening, so it has to be a certain temperature for everyone, and we apologize and all the rest of it. But he said, I'm sure we'll have it exactly right by the 7th of September, which of course is when the festival finishes. We're going to talk about 2 films in this episode, which I think kind of align pretty well. They're both competition films. They're both got major performances by their female lead, and they have been shown, one yesterday, one the day before yesterday. The first one we're going to talk about is Maria by Pablo Larraín, and stars Angelina Jolie as Maria Callas, the famous opera singer. If this was a wonderfully produced podcast, this would be the moment where I would cut to a clip of the film and Maria Callas singing.
Yeah, an aria. Or her dogs also singing an aria.
Yeah, whimpering perhaps at a certain point. So this film goes into a series of films that Pablo Larraín has created about famous female figures in history, true people, like Spencer for Princess Diana, Jackie for Jackie Kennedy, and now, of course, Maria Callas. What did you make of it, David? How was what was your response?
I rather liked it. I mean, I think of the three of this trilogy about tragic women, it is, I think, the weakest. I wasn't a huge fan of Spencer. I thought it did a lot right, but I thought it could have lent into a more kind of surreal territory and gone down a more dreamlike state, which this does. This kind of chronicles the last week of Maria Callas before she was found dead at the age of, I think it was 56, in her Paris apartment, and we get a series of scenes of her wandering in Paris, of her locked up in her lavish flat with her butler and also her cook or housekeeper, and we're made aware that we should be distrustful of what is real and what is not. This could all be the fever dream of Maria Callas in her last moments in many ways, and in that respect it reminded me a lot of Blonde, the Marilyn Monroe film, but I thought that the Monroe film took more risks than Pablo Larraín's film Maria, and in many ways I was kind of hoping that he'd subvert a little bit more the biopic genre with this one, but no, overall I had a good time. What did you make of it?
It's interesting. I didn't think of Blonde, but that's a really good comparison, which of course showed at the Venice Film Festival and then drowned on Netflix, as many of these films tend to do. Disturbingly, Maria has been bought for the US territory by Netflix. Hopefully it will have a theatrical run in Europe. I think it might do. As for the film, well, let's think about it in context of the trilogy that you already talked about. I think this is kind of, as you say, a weaker. I think Jackie is more daring and challenging. I think Spencer has a quirkiness to it and a performance by Kristen Stewart, which is really, really good. But I think this is kind of almost weirdly the more middlebrow and acceptable. I can see this being more successful in many ways.
Yeah, perhaps more deferential to its subject. I don't know. I mean, it felt very respectful. You're told that, she is a difficult diva, but at no point do you really see it that much. You get glimpses of it, but not really. And as much as, like I said, I enjoyed the way she is essentially writing, as she says, writing her autobiography herself. And through that we see she's preparing to be interviewed by a camera crew and a British journalist who is named after her drug of choice, because she is pill popping during the whole film. And there are some interesting moments, but again, a little bit like Spencer, I just wish that it had been a bit more ambitious, just to really just do something rather unique. And I was reminded of that scene in Spencer when Kirsten Stewart as Princess Diana is eating soup, and one of the pearls on her necklace drops into the soup and she crunches the pearl, and I could have just done with something a little bit more. If we are talking about a fever dream, if we are talking about somebody whose grasp on reality is fading, I just wanted something a little bit more daring, maybe more adventurous.
Yeah, that is interesting, and I think one of the weaknesses that I felt the film had should have been one of its strengths, which is the opera.
Right.
You get a lot of Angelina Jolie lip syncing, but I think the film kind of tacitly admits that it doesn't know really what to do with that, because during these series of arias that you have, which take place partly in a rehearsal studio, well, it's actually in a theatre, but they're rehearsing. It cuts between that and sort of flashbacks of the performances. But every single one of them is filmed in much the same way, very much usually with Angelina Jolie's back and the audience in front of her, and then shot from a distance. And so you don't actually get as much emoting and as much connection to the opera as I wish. And you certainly don't get anything audacious in terms of how it presents that. Now, that's not to say there are some scenes with music which are a little bit more surreal. She imagines an orchestra out in the rain. She imagines a crowd scene singing in front of the Eiffel Tower. And those two bits are good. But all the bits that are in the theatre are just sort of drab and repetitive, even down to the camera movements.
Very much so, and I found what you mentioned about the lip syncing a little bit distracting. Now, apparently, Angelina Jolie spent 6 months prepping and getting vocal lessons, and of course, it is completely unreasonable for anyone to think that, you know, after 6 months she'd get to the same level and that she could sing the whole thing. Of course, no one's asking that. But for some reason, the lip syncing, when you did see it quite close up, because there are a few instances, I never believed it. The artifice was there. Now, maybe that is by design, but for me, it took me out of the film, and I found it very, very hard to emotionally connect with the character. And by and large, I don't know what you think about this. It is a film that, unlike Jackie and Spencer, the stakes are quite low, if non-existent, really. I mean, you see this woman kind of nearing the end of her life, and there are moments of emotion. I'm thinking in particular about a meeting with her and her sister, which I found rather brilliantly written by actually, what's his name?
Stephen Knight, the writer of Locke and Peaky Blinders.
Peaky Blinders, exactly. And there are moments, and he's very good at the one-liners. Like Angelina Jolie gets to kind of come out with a few zingers. You know, I come to restaurants to be adored. And she sells it. But I don't know, so something was missing there. And in the end, I thought that some of the supporting characters were actually a little bit stronger, her staff. And to be fair, specifically in Spencer, it's the same thing. A lot of time is dedicated to the staff, and they represent something of a humanity. And I thought that in that respect, the ending worked rather well. But yeah, I don't know. I think many people were expecting, myself included, that this was going to be Angelina Jolie's big comeback, that this would be, you know, the firing pistol towards Oscar glory. And while Kirsten Stewart and Natalie Portman were both nominated for Oscars for their respective roles in Spencer and Jackie, I can imagine Angelina Jolie might get some recognition, but I don't think that this is an Oscar-worthy performance.
I think just the simple fact that she hasn't been in anything for ages means that this is like de facto a comeback, regardless of the sort of quality. And I think she's probably the best thing in it, although you're absolutely right to point out Pier Francesco Favino in the role of Ferruccio the butler, and Alba Roaca, who is Alicia Roaca's sister. Or have I got that the right way around?
Yes,
sure.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. And
the director of La Camera, and she has a role in La Camera and a lot of her sister's films, but is also one of the hardest working actresses in the Italian film industry. I think they're very good, and I would have kind of liked to have seen a little bit more of them as well. And Valeria Golino, of course, is wonderful as her sister, and brings some much needed sort of reality and sort of earth and soiliness, because that's the thing about Callas, to go to the historical figure, is she was a Greek peasant girl who had a life in sex work as an exploited child, and she kind of retained that. She was friends with Paolo Pasolini, very close friends, none of which is really covered in the film, which is fine because it's not that sort of autobiography. It's not that sort of biopic. That's fine, but I just wanted a little bit more, less of the Audrey Hepburn sort of haughtiness and you'll know the French word for this, froideur, the sort of coldness.
La froideur, yes.
There you go. That's why you need EuroNews. Trusty EuroNews at my side.
What did you make, by the way, of... Because one thing we haven't spoken about is, because it is a big part of her life, is Onassis. Because this film does actually take it full circle in this trilogy, because he left Callas for Jackie Kennedy. And so I did appreciate that. Everything was kind of tied up rather neatly.
The Pablo Larraín universe.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I don't know. What did you make of that? Because I enjoyed the black and white sequences there, but there was something I didn't feel in any way that she is, as she states herself, haunted by his death and by his absence. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it didn't really help that there was a perfectly good performance. 1 second. Okay, we've just moved to avoid the charm of the passing motorboats, wore thin. You were talking about
Onassis.
Aristotle Onassis. He has a really major role in this film, and he's played absolutely adequately by a actor whose name I don't know, and who is and I kind of feel that might have been a weakness of the film, that if you'd had a really charismatic and an actor to the level of celebrity of Angelina Jolie, or at least recognizable, you might have been able to go with it, whereas I spent a lot of my...
When the energy is high and the music is right, pushing past your limits becomes that much easier. Take a reggaeton run or strength class on the Peloton tread, and you'll quickly see why these are the workouts you've been searching for. Every day brings new challenges from expert coaches who train and speak the same language as you do. Level up your workouts with Peloton Tread. Find your push, find your power. Peloton. Visit onepeloton.com.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Time thinking of that old sort of Mrs. Merton quote, what first attracted you to the millionaire Paul Daniels? I didn't really believe it was a love affair so much as somebody who had been seduced by the amazing wealth, and it didn't really explore that. It treated it as a love affair, and it didn't explore how, he hated opera, for instance, and I don't know, in the world of today, I just... a lot of red flags shot up.
Absolutely, and yeah, no, I didn't buy it as a love affair, nor did I feel particularly connected to that strand, which is a shame, because that would have gone a long way into empathizing and having a connection with Maria Callas. But no, I mean on the whole, I know we've kind of focused on some of the negatives, but I mean I do appreciate what he's done with regards to these women, specifically in this case Callas, who are trapped by the myth of their celebrity, and who have to wrestle with it. But like I said, I just, this is not one I'm looking forward to seeing again. Whereas Blonde, the Dominic film, I thought was just so much more audacious and took more risks, and while imperfect, that is one that I've revisited, and it had something a little bit more to it.
Oh, that's really interesting. I haven't yet revisited it, but I've always intended to. I was a great fan of the novel, which I think people a lot of people haven't read because it's such a doorstopper. To sort of add to your comments and close our discussion on Maria, I do think this, as I said right at the outset, I do think this is an entertaining film, and I can imagine this is my typical sort of rainy Sunday afternoon film, which is good fun for all the family. There's nothing offensive in it. Everybody would watch it and get something out of it. I don't. It's very highly polished. It's the crownification of history sort of continues with this sort of like all the motor cars gleam and the leather creaks and people soft foot it across beautifully furnished rooms, and we get to see, you know, behind the doors of the rich and famous, and we're allowed a certain, you know, to satisfy our voyeurism to some degree.
Absolutely, and also one thing we didn't mention is the fact that it is like stunningly shot, you know, on various types of film, and it's you know, it gives us this kind of almost autumnal postcard of Paris, which looks stunning, and as you said, in those moments there are these sequences where she is kind of almost faced, borderline bullied by this crowd that starts singing directly in her face. And again, I know I sound like a scratched record here, but I could have done with a lot more of that.
Yeah, I've got a feeling that's a budgetary thing, because that's one of the noticeable bits. Eiffel Tower in the background, which is definitely shot in Paris, but actually most of those street scenes are shot in Hungary, and anyone with a passing knowledge of the European capitals will sort of, that might take you out of it a little bit. An American audience, not so much perhaps, but likewise, I think for perhaps, I'm not sure, what you said earlier about the cinematography, this is a little bit, I think, a function of him going to that well so often that you sort of have a prelude to the film where you sort of see her life almost in flashback, and then you keep having these, you know, going from one filter to the other, and one of them is a sort of very much a cine Super 8 filter, and it's like an Instagram filter almost, because you're going, well, what are they shooting this on home movies? She's performing at a concert hall. What sort of film are we supposed to be seeing right now? And black and white, okay, yeah, I get it, but it just sort of struck me as like almost this feels a little bit automatic, a little bit too what Lorraine, maybe he's doing it for consistency for this trilogy. Yeah.
Maybe, but oh god, there's one thing that you just reminded me of, which actually really was a bum note for me here. It's the ending. He kind of succumbs to that biopic trope of showing real footage of Callas at the end. And this is a bugbear of mine, because if you've asked me to suspend my disbelief for 2 hours, and by that it is Angelina Jolie is Maria Callas, do not show me at the end footage of the real Maria Callas, because then you're just like, oh, she didn't really look anything like her. And
yeah.
Hold on, yeah, I get that it's respectful and again maybe overly deferential, but just don't do it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Also because in that brief footage you see a side of Maria Callas you haven't seen in the whole film.
Correct.
You see her, instead of drifting through these rooms with this sort of glacial sort of beauty, you see her, you know, I hope it's not an offensive thing to say, sort of peasant stock, sort of winking at the camera, and you can see that behind the diva, maybe the reason the diva has been created in that way is because of where she's come from, and that she's not hiding it to some, you know, she's putting it off, but she's not hiding it. A little bit like Madonna being this little girl from New York and creating all these personas for herself to conquer the world with. Okay, from one, you know, performance which I think is supposed to be, in quotation marks, towering. I'm not sure it quite gets there, but perfectly sufficient.
Yes.
To another performance and another female-led film, and apologies to everyone. I'm going to try to talk to some women about this film because this is a sausage party of a podcast. Because the next film we're going to talk about is Babygirl, starring Nicole Kidman.
Yeah. This is one of my highlights so far. Not a perfect film by any stretch, but definitely one of the strongest things in competition so far. And as you say, it stars Nicole Kidman as a high-powered CEO who risks everything: her career, her family, her relationship with her theatre director husband, played by Antonio Banderas, rather brilliantly played, I might add, by Antonio Banderas. and she embarks on in a torrid affair with a younger intern at work, and it's an affair that sees her tap into some of her suppressed desires and the fact that she needs more, she needs risks, she needs something to be at stake, and that takes the form of a BDSM relationship, a sub-dom relationship, in which both participants are trying to figure it out. The young intern Samuel, played by Harris Dickinson of Triangle of Sadness, has more figured out. But they begin this very kind of slanted power dynamic, and there is something at stake here, because as he says at one point in the film, with just one phone call, I can ruin you. And in the film's defense, it very much plays with the genre of kind of 80s erotic thrillers, but puts a very nice modern spin on it and a very sex-positive spin on it, which I think the director, whose name I'm going to mispronounce, Helena Regen?
I think so. She's a Dutch director, famous in the past for, her most recent film before this was Bodies, 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 but she also did a film called...
I know this.
It's a one-word title.
Yes.
It's something like, not Isolation.
Hold on, I'm going to look it up. But basically, yes, and in that film, it shows the relationship between a sex offender and his therapist, and so she was. It was great for this kind of material, because she has in the past shown these, like I said, slanted power dynamics, these gender dynamics. And hold on, I'm going to look it up now.
And she's also a famous actress in her own right. Nicole Kidman made a point in the press conference yesterday that she would play all the roles in order to show what she wanted, a little bit a la Charlie Chaplin's style. And she said it was a bit intimidating because she was better at playing these roles than the actors themselves. So that was a sort of funny story that we were privy to.
Instinct.
Exactly, Indistinct, which is really, really, really uncomfortable film. And there are moments of discomfort in this movie. I thought while I was watching it, I'm really uncomfortable here, but I'm 52 years old and I'm a man, and my knowledge of my, imprinting of female sexuality comes from the 70s and 80s. As much as I've tried to learn in the subsequent years, it means that of course you have prejudices and you have hang-ups and you have things that aren't necessarily true or aren't necessarily accurate of the people around you, the women around you. And so I thought this is exactly the sort of film that should be disturbing me. I'm exactly the sort of audience that should be disturbed by it. And that's why I kind of want to speak to some women about it as well, who I've already spoken to actually following the screening, to see their takes on it, because it's very much about female desire and how it doesn't fit into an easy box. It doesn't fit into an easy categorization.
Yeah, and I think that's what I really appreciated about this film, is it just does explore how these, quote unquote, maybe shameful desires need their space, and how the suppression of these desires can be just as potentially dangerous as a torrid affair. And there's one thing which I really like that... again, how do you pronounce it? Regen?
Regen, I think.
Yeah, Helena Regen does, is that there's a complete lack of moral judgment here. These are not, unlike an erotic thriller in the 80s where the central female protagonist should be punished for what she's done and there's a moralistic approach. Here, it embraces the fact that there's contradictions to people's desires, to the fact that we are all very, very complex, and she never judges her characters, and in that respect I think that's where the film really, really shines. And in that absence of good and bad binaries, no, we're just talking about desires, voracious desires, which feed rather well into the central question of the film, is who's in control and where will it go, and in its defense, it really does subvert what you're used to from that genre.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. It looks amazing. It's brilliantly filmed. Wonderful performances from both Kidman Dickinson, and as you said, brilliant support from Banderas, who is warm and funny, and of course brings with him this whole thing of being the Latin lover, and so how can you possibly not be satisfied with that? Nicole Kidman's character, answer me that. But that lack of judgment, I think, in a sense, there is a way that it is somewhat deferred. You do have this wonderful scene where I think it's Banderas sort of shouts at her about the children, but the children are actually much more wise than their parents to the ways of the world. Her daughter is of an age where she's having her own sexual relationships, her own, and when her mother questions her about it, she's got a wise head on her shoulders, and very much the mother-daughter role is reversed. At one point, the daughter turns up and says, "Time to go home, Mum," and Mum's come home from a nightclub a bit too late, and a lot of that is very comic and very funny. This is a hilarious film, as well as erotic and funny and thrilling. As you said, it has these beats which are definitely thriller beats. But I also had this is what I wanted to come back to, what you mentioned about judgment. I think there's a moralism in the film, and a moralism I would applaud, in that it's all the whole film is couched in the context of a sort of capitalism which is dehumanizing. And the company that Nicole Kidman runs is like an Amazon kind of shipping company, which is entirely about getting rid of human beings and roboticizing everything.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I mean, it's interesting that you saw that, because I mean, what I got from that was specifically because she runs this automated delivery system with robots, and the fact that her husband is a theatre director, so she knows a thing or two about roboticism, about automation, but also performance, because we see very early on, I don't think this is too much of a spoiler, like the film begins on an orgasm, and then after
it's the very first shot.
Yes, and afterwards Nicole Kidman's character heads out of the bedroom to watch some porn in order to maybe get an orgasm that she didn't have with her husband. And so I quite enjoyed that sense of the humanity that you lock up kind of thing, because you feel like it is dark, like it is shameful, but in reality it's not about that. The film very, very openly states, really, by the end of it, that the crucial thing is open and honest communication with regards to your desires, your emotions, and your kinks.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think I took something slightly different. I think there is a sort of like, okay, where's the human in all of this? But I thought also it was almost like arguing that the problems about sexuality or worrying about sexuality, or all of this, these are actually problems which could actually be talked out. And again, in the press conference, Helena, the director, said, if they'd had a 5-minute conversation, all of this could be, there's even a scene with her and her husband where she tries to resolve the issue. And if he'd just gone, okay, I'm into this, then that would have been that kind of everything. That would have been, and in the end, 5 minutes short. I think that image of them living in this wider society, there are lots of shots of New York and a sun coming up or sun going down, and we're living in planet capitalism. And I just had this feel that it was sort of saying, we can do everything we like in our sort of corporate spaces while the rest of the world is now going to run on automatic. And it's almost as if maybe these aren't the battles we should be as concerned about. This is, I'm not going to say this because it's a spoiler, but the ending, I think, has a very specific message in terms of that. So I'll put a pin in that, and once everybody's seen the film, you can email me and say, yes, John, I totally see what you mean now.
There's one thing though, I mean, because like I said, I really, really enjoyed this. However, I can't deny that the film reminded me, and maybe because of this particular festival context of other films, like the Haneke's The Piano Teacher, or even Verhoeven, because Helena has worked with Verhoeven before, Elle. And the thing is granted, two films that don't purport to say the same thing or to approach the same things, but at the same time which dealt with female sexuality in a way that left me with a lot of questions, with a lot of ambiguities, and I found those ambiguities very intoxicating, and it made me really kind of think about it. And I can't deny that this Babygirl does tend to, I don't know if it's resolve things too neatly, but I kind of wanted more. I wanted to kind of leave the cinema, with my questions having questions almost. Because here, as much as it is explored who is in control, what's going to happen next, there was something about Isabelle Huppert's characters in those two films that I've mentioned that felt just more, I don't know, like it really kind of grasped at what made people complex in a way that here, maybe less so. I don't know. That's my main kind of gripe with the film. A bit like Maria, I can't deny. I wanted something a bit more. I don't know what the
gritty
word. And not necessarily gritty. Just with it leaving me feeling like something is unresolved. And necessarily so, because there are no easy answers to this. I mean, the grasping with one's sexuality, with one's desires, with one's identity is a knotty process, and not one that happens overnight. And here I kind of felt like it was lacking something.
I think I'm really going to disagree with you on those examples and that point, which is great. This is why we have festivals, and this is why I love talking to you, David. Haneke, I definitely feel that, interestingly enough, I was thinking of Isabelle Huppert watching this film, because in more than one shot, Kidman has something of a look of her, and that's where it feels like she's going as an actress, which is great news for Nicole Kidman fans. I think Haneke has a ideology which is very austere and very nihilistic, and in its own way very simplistic and very unambiguous, in fact. And I think he makes something of a fetish of this kind of bleakness, and it all resolves itself ultimately in a kind of shrug about how terrible human beings are and how unbearable living is. In its own way, that's easy. In its own way, that is not as knotty as it apparently seems. And I would argue that this film, which is an entertaining American studio picture, manages to touch the way great pre-code films did. I'm thinking specifically of Design for Living with Gary Cooper and Miriam Hopkins, which is one of the great ménage à trois movies. I think it is in that tradition of doing something very subversive with Hollywood stars and with people who are, who you would not, you put Isabelle Huppert in this and put subtitles on it, and everyone is like, will be jumping somersaults. This is a film we're just not used to seeing in the Hollywood system, unless, and this is, again, hats off to Nicole Kidman, you're watching Eyes Wide Shut.
Right, and Eyes Wide Shut is, again, maybe a good touchstone here, but again, in using the examples of The Piano Teacher and Elle, in no way kind of compare it to this film to the extent that Helena is doing something very, very different, and it's not the same thing. But like I said, I could have done without, and again, I can't spoil the ending here, but I could have done with something left unresolved. That I think is what I'm trying to say, maybe a little bit clumsily, but I think I do see what you mean, and it is a very bold film, because to have Nicole Kidman, an American star, and this is this hits at the heart of American Puritanism in a lot of ways, because, you know, similar films like, you know, I know we've had like 9.5 Weeks, you know, the 50 Shades of Grey. I mean, you know, all these are so tame compared and say absolutely nothing, and in fact are incredibly insulting in many ways. Specifically with 50 Shades of Grey with regards to sexual identity and kinks. I think, I don't know, that there are just certain films that left me with more to think about. And this maybe wasn't one of them, despite, again, the fact that I think this is a very, very good film. And with regards to Isabelle Huppert being president this year, I can totally see Isabelle Huppert loving this film. And in saying that, I would not be surprised if it left the Venice Film Festival this year with a few prizes. Well, with one prize in particular, I think that Nicole Kidman as Best Actress would be a very, very good shout. Again, early days, but yeah.
Very early days, and that's unless Nicole, Isabelle Huppert as the president is a bit of a diva and goes, "That's my role." Le Huppert bows to no one. Thank you so much, David, for your contributions and for your opinions, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Well, no, thank you, John. It's always a pleasure being here, and always a pleasure hearing your takes on films as well.
Shorter days and chillier nights can make it tough to keep up your fall workout routine. Thankfully, there's Alo Moves, the app that brings health and wellness to the comfort of your home. Alo Moves offers yoga, Pilates, strength workouts, and other fitness classes, plus wellness offerings like meditations, sound baths, and more. Whether you have 5 minutes or an hour, Alo Moves has a class or flow that saves you from a frigid trip to the gym. Get a 30-day free trial and 20% off an annual membership with code ACAST at allomoves.com.
If there's one thing that my family and friends know me for, it's being an amazing gift giver. I owe it all to Celebrations Passport from 1-800-Flowers.com, my one-stop shopping site that has amazing gifts for every occasion. With Celebrations Passport, I get free shipping on thousands of amazing gifts. And the more gifts I give, the more perks and rewards I earn. To learn more and take your gift giving to the next level, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.